President Cyril Ramaphosa is today visiting families of 3 victims of violent abuse in the Eastern Cape. He has already paid his respects to Mrwetyana and Leighandre baby Lee Jegels family and is now at the home of Angelique Clark-Abrahams. The 3 victims died in a horrific incident of violence in the past few weeks, and their death has once more put women's safety in the spotlight. We now cross to our reporter Busi Jemsana-Mantashe. Good afternoon, Busi. Perhaps you could take us through some of the events from this morning and also the message that President Cyril Ramaphosa seeks to convey to the families.
Afternoon to you too. The president has just come from the hospital where he visited boxing champion's mother, who is still in a critical condition in hospital. Right now, we are coming to you from Angelique Clark-Abrahams' home, where the president has just arrived, and right behind me he is meeting with the family behind a closed door. Just to remind you of what happened to Angelique, she was brutally murdered allegedly by her husband in full view of their 6-year-old boy, who the family says is yet to receive counseling. We spoke to Angelique's grandmother, who relayed the sad story of how her granddaughter died in front of her grandson, a 6-year-old, saying that Angelique's husband had a history of beating up their daughter. She was a violent man, and right at the point where he killed or allegedly strangled to death Angelique, that's when just a week after Angelique went to file for divorce, went to get a court order against her husband, but unfortunately, even with the court order, he was able to get to her and kill her. The 6-year-old, when he was here, when we came in, was also he still remembers in detail exactly what happened, how this man strangled his mother. He would seem like he does not really get a sense of just what has happened, as he just speaks that my mother is dead, my father killed my mother, he choked her, I saw them. And also saying that when I was a little boy, they never used to fight, something that would suggest that the little boy over the years was subjected to witnessing this domestic violence between her mother and her father. The family is now speaking with the president and still in disbelief that their daughter died at the hands of her husband, the person who was supposed to protect her in everything. Really something that links to the debate that is going around, that it is not strangers alone, it is not men unknown to victims, but it is men that victims trust, it is men known to them, it is fathers of these young children, it is husbands to wives that kill them and they lose their lives over their hands. And now a call that there be a national campaign against gender-based violence. The president, when he was speaking at the Mrwetyana family, is saying that there needs to be an action to change the psyche of how men think and how they see women in society, and it would seem that begins now, and this is what needs to change: the psyche, the thinking, how women fall victim of men that they love and stay with, how it is so easy for men to take life and kill these vulnerable women. That is the sad story that the Clark family is relaying now, that their daughter is no more. The grandmother also saying to us that she warned Angelique that you must be careful of your husband, he might harm you, but Angelique saying, no, I will will be fine, and that he went to the police. We are told that the man was granted bail, and few days after he went to Angelique's home, Angelique's house, and strangled her to death. We yet to hear what the president will be discussing with the family, and if his words will have any consolation to the bereaved family that is still in disbelief, that is still very emotional over the loss of their daughter. But more of their concern is the little boy that witnessed all this. They look at him and he keeps on relaying, he keeps on talking about what has happened, and they are saying that they will be taking him for counseling after the funeral, and that counseling is really needed. So that's what's happening. The president is inside together with Minister Abrahams, Minister Ronald Lamula, Deputy Minister Zizi Kodwa, and the Premier talking to the family inside. We'll be keeping you up to date as to what they come to, and if the president will be able to speak to us after he has heard what has happened and spoken to the family, and what the family is saying about what has happened. Really, women across the country saying that something needs to be done, and this needs to be dealt with in the most urgent manner as possible.
All right, that is BUSISWE coming to us live from the Eastern Cape, where President Cyril Ramaphosa is visiting the families of those affected by gender-based violence that we've seen increase over the past few weeks. However, earlier President Cyril Ramaphosa again appealed to men in the country to stop the scourge of rape and killing of women in the country. He was speaking at the home of the slain UCT student Mrwetyana at Beacon Bay in East London. He's accompanied by Premier Oscar Mabuyane, Justice Minister Ronald Lamola, and Communications Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams. They were in the Eastern Cape to visit the families of the 3 victims of gender-based violence. President Ramaphosa had this to say.
We've reached a watershed moment in relation to how our nation looks at gender-based violence, the rape and killing of the women of our nation. And we must also say that we have now reached a turning point as a nation on dealing with gender-based violence. This must be seen as a moment when South Africa as a whole reaches a moment where we say, yes, enough is enough. We've reached a turning point, and we are now going to turn a new leaf and deal with gender-based violence in a much more focused manner. This must be taken as a national project where all of us get involved, where government plays its role, where society broadly plays its role, where families also play their role, where the men of our country stop this scourge, because the moral fiber of our nation is now at a point where men must take responsibility for the manner in which we treat the women of our country.
The Durban High Court has ruled in favor of